I want to start off this video with a good news and a bad news. First, the bad news. You have to be able to draw and label the heart. And now the good news, it's not that difficult. And we start off this video by explaining that the heart is a muscle, and it's called the cardiac muscle, and cardiac means nothing more than and nothing less than heart. So, and over here in pink, you can see that the heart has a relatively thick wall, and that's the cardiac muscle. And you can also see that the wall over here, this is the left side of the heart, is slightly thicker than the right side of the heart. And this one is the left side of the heart because left and right are always seen from the person's view. So that's the cardiac muscle. The heart is myogenic in nature, and this means that the heart is able to contract on its own. It initiates its own heartbeat. It is not dependent on a signal from the brain. Of course, nerve signals from the brain can and do increase or decrease the heart contraction, the rate of contraction, but the actual heartbeat itself is initiated by the heart itself. And this is the concept is referred to as myogenic. The heart has several valves, and there are 4 of them. And they make sure that the blood does not flow back, but always flows forward into one direction when the heart muscle contracts. And the valves are over here, these white structures. So that's a heart valve, this one over here, these over here, and these over here. And you can see that they're open up always into one way to make sure that the blood is able to flow only into the correct direction. There are small heart chambers, and they're referred to as atria, and the ending A, atria, that's plural, and these are the collecting chambers, and this one over here is the right atrium, and this one over here is the left atrium. They're called collecting chambers because the blood, which flows down in here, collects first in the atria, and also of course there's a blood vessel from down here. It goes up in here, it collects in here, and over here also blood flowing through these blood vessels collect over here in the atria. So atria is plural, atrium is singular. The ventricles are the large pumping chambers, and over here you have the right ventricle, and this one over here is the left ventricle. Arteries are blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart. Do not confuse the word artery with the term atria or atrium. This is a common confusion. So the blood which flows into the atrium over here down the ventricle leaves the heart over this blood vessel. Is called the pulmonary artery. We talk about this more later. And it's an artery because it carries blood away from the heart. And this one over here as well, blood flows down here. And this one is referred to as the aorta, which is also an artery. And you also have veins, and these veins carry blood to the heart. So I already talked about some of these veins. That's a vein over here. That's the vena cava. That's also the vena cava inferior, vena cava superior. And these are the pulmonary veins. And as you can see, they carry the blood to the heart. So to summarize all of this, the heart has 4 heart chambers, 2 atria, 2 ventricles, and it has valves over here between the atrium and the ventricle, over here as well. And over here there are valves which can be found at the beginning of the 2 atria, the pulmonary artery and the aorta. But again, the name I'm going to talk and explain later. The purpose of this slide is simply to give you an overview of the heart. So, You have to be able to draw this, as I already mentioned, but there is also a simpler way of drawing the heart. Do not draw this on an exam. I'm just giving you this drawing over here because it's easier to understand the flow of the blood. If you would like to copy this into your notebook, I have the recommendation that you start drawing two boxes. A large box down here and then two smaller boxes. Now this is really crooked, okay? And in the middle here a separation, and then you remove these lines here by erasing them, okay? And you add the blood vessels and so on. Bad drawing, really bad drawing, but I hope you get the point. I'm going to erase this. So let's label the parts of the heart, which I explained just in the previous foil, over here again. This side over here is the right side of the heart. This one is the right atrium. I abbreviated with RA. This one then is the right ventricle. This is the left atrium and the left ventricle. Now I'm not going to write this down, but you should write this down. And it's also possible for you to draw labeling lines. These over here, these structures over here, are the valves. And these valves, they have a name. They are found between the atria and the ventricles, so they are referred to as the atrioventricular valves. Ventricular valves. And the second type of valve you can find over here. These ones over here. And they are can be found at the beginning of the artery, which carries the blood away from the heart. And these are called the semi-lunar valves. And now I don't know where to draw my labeling arrow. Semi-lunar valve. Now, these valves also have more specific names. For example, this atrioventricular valve over here is also known as the mitral valve. This one is known as the pulmonary valve. For our purposes right now, not so relevant. Just know that there are these four valves which open up between the atrium and the ventricle, and here at the beginning of the arteries. So the next thing is the following. We have now 4 blood vessels, and over here there's a blood vessel which carries blood to the heart, to the right atrium, to the collecting chamber, and this blood vessel over here is a vein, therefore, and is known as the vena cava. As you have seen probably in the previous drawing, there are 2 of them. There's one at the top, there's also one at the bottom. The top one is referred to as the vena cava superior, the bottom one as the vena cava inferior. Now this is a very simplified drawing, so I just simply left it out. Over here, there is another vein over here, and this one is known as the pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein. Also carrying, of course, blood towards the heart, and we have 2 arteries. This one is known as the pulmonary artery, found on the right side. Pulmonary artery. And this artery over here is the biggest artery in your body, is known as the aorta. Now how is this related to the rest of the body, and how does the blood flow? Let's trace the flow of the blood. Over here the blood flows from the vena cava into the collecting chamber, the right atrium. From here the blood flows into the right ventricle. In the right ventricle it contracts and it flows out over here through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. And I'm going to continue the area over here, the lungs, and from the lungs, at the lungs it picks up oxygen, carbon dioxide is removed, and it flows back over here through the pulmonary vein to the left atrium, the left ventricle, and then out here through the aorta to the rest of the body. Now I'm going to make a big arrow over here, all the way down here. I write down body, the rest of the body, and from the rest of the body back to the heart through the vena cava. And really important to understand here is that the artery over here carries deoxygenated blood. It carries blood of low oxygen content, even though it's an artery, because the oxygen yet has to be picked up at the lungs. And over here we have a vein, the pulmonary vein, which carries blood rich in oxygen. Many people think that arteries always carry oxygen-rich blood, but this is not correct. Arteries are not defined on whether they carry oxygen or not. Arteries and veins are defined on whether they carry blood to or away from the heart. So this was basically the so-called quick and dirty drawing. Over here we now have the previous drawing, which we're going to label right now. Or if you want, you can stop the video and you can try to label it yourself. You can try to identify the structures yourself. Otherwise, I'm simply going to start right now. Over here, we have the vena cava, the superior one, carrying blood to the heart. Over here, we have the inferior vena cava, also carrying blood to the heart. In this case, the right atrium. We have the aorta, which is the main artery, carrying blood to the rest of the body. We have the pulmonary artery, which carries blood to the left and the right lung. That's why it splits up here, because it goes to the left and to the right lung. You have the pulmonary vein, also two of them over here, because the blood comes from the left and the right lung, and they carry the blood back to the heart. We have the left aorta, the collecting chamber over here. And you see the left side of the heart over here is colored red, because this indicates that the blood is oxygenated. We have the right aorta over here, the right collecting chamber. You see over here the blood is deoxygenated on the right side. We have the left ventricle, which is the slightly stronger ventricle. It has a thicker wall over here, because the blood has to be pumped to the rest of the body. And the right ventricle over here pumps the blood only, so to say, to the lungs, and therefore the right ventricle can be a little bit weaker, because it's easier to pump the blood through the lungs than through the rest of the body. And we have the atrioventricular valve over here. It's this one over here. There's another one over here, the atrioventricular valve, and these valves over here are referred to as the semilunar valves. These over here. So, and that's basically it. And what you have to do is you have to practice drawing and labeling the heart. Make sure that the structures are located at the appropriate positions, that they also have the appropriate size. Okay? So this was it, and happy drawing.